And I posted, I'm like, people look at this chart and say to themselves, I don't know, it seems risky, better sit on the sidelines to wait to see how this plays out. And it's like it's playing out in front of your eyes. That's another thing, housing prices are actually collapsing, denominated in Bitcoin. Robin, when we were hanging out a year ago at Bitcoin Amsterdam, we're at like $60,000 Bitcoin. We're at 110 right now, and everyone's freaking out. Let's project out 5 years from now where we're at in the Bitcoin price. Everyone needs to chill out. It's going to be hero or zero. But the thing is, Bitcoin is either going to zero or it's going to 1 million. Well, guess what? It's not going to zero. Gold, you could touch it. You have it in your hand. It can't, nothing. And that is like the biggest flaw in gold. The introduction into the gold world was really the first stepping stone to really helping understand, okay, why Bitcoin is superior. There could not be a better environment for why someone would want to own sound money to protect their savings.
Hi, Mitch. How are you doing? Everything fine on your end?
Hey, Robin. Yeah, no, it's good to see you again. I know we first met up at Bitcoin Amsterdam in 2024, and then got to chat a little bit in Prague a few months ago. So glad to finally make it on the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. It has been, we're planning this very show since almost a year.
Yeah. So glad we're finally making it happen now.
Before we get started with all the topics and everything that we were talking about, maybe give us some brief overview of who you are and especially why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Absolutely. So, first off, I'm Mitch. I'm mainly on X. You could find me at Mitch_BTC21 if you want to get in touch with me or follow, what I have going on. As for background on myself and kind of how I got into this. So, I spent the last 12 years in the corporate world, primarily in New York City, starting my career at NASDAQ. And during that time was working mostly in the field of investor relations, doing corporate sales, working with CEOs, CFOs, heads of IR of NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange listed companies. And I first got, since that point, I've exited that world a few months ago, and now I'm dedicating myself to the Bitcoin space. But during that time, I first became aware of Bitcoin. I was finishing up college. This had to have been this is in 2013, and I heard someone mention it. And back then, it was like, I wasn't involved in this, but you hear the Peter McCormack type stories. Like someone might try to buy drugs with it or do something, like illicit with it back in like the early days of Bitcoin, or someone had some in their account and it, went up crazy in price and then crashed down, and you hear these things, but never really thought anything of it. So yeah, that was in 2013. It wasn't until again, I got reintroduced to Bitcoin in 2017, and I was living in New York City. I had apartment on Wall Street, was working at One Liberty Plaza in downtown Manhattan at NASDAQ's headquarters. And in our office, we had TVs all throughout the office. They'd be on CNBC all day. And during that kind of run in 2017, we had in the summer, Bitcoin would pop on TV every now and then, and you'd see some of the crazy returns. Oh, it's, $700, it's $1,000, it's $2,000. And during that time as well, you saw some just kind of horrific crashes that would happen along the way, just down 30% like that, like it's nothing. And I remember it, like as that run was going on in 2017, I was also dealing with, since I'd work with issuers and usually at like the CFO level, and there were a lot of companies during that time, like small cap companies that were then like issuing press releases about this stuff, or doing a name change of a company to XYZ crypto or XYZ blockchain company, or, saying that they're, they used to be a gold mining company. Now they're switching and bought Bitcoin mining rigs, and they're getting into that space. And, during that hype phase, anything that you put out there just starts pumping the stock. And then it was also the ICO boom at the time. And it just felt like really like the Wild West. And frankly, it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth about broader crypto and some of the actors in that space. But nonetheless, as Bitcoin was running, I remember asking one of my colleagues about it. I'm like, so what, what is Bitcoin? And I remember their response. They're like, it's money. And I just went like, that's not going to work. Like, what do you mean it's money? And anyway, like it was, people were talking about it every day. The price continued to run. And as we get later in the year into December of 2017, we're now at $10,000 plus Bitcoin. And I remember us having coffee with one of my colleagues in the NASDAQ, kind of lounge area we'd hang out. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to do it. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and download Coinbase on my phone, and went ahead and threw what would be it wasn't a huge amount, the equivalent of maybe like one paycheck, right? And just smash bought Bitcoin, literally top of the market, $17,000 Bitcoin. And I was like, but my mindset at the time was like, okay, it's going up like crazy. It'll hit when it hits 20,000, I'll sell it and just, be out of it. And that's it. And, obviously, how the story goes from there. Maybe it tagged 20K for a second. And then it proceeded to go down nearly every single day, or at least what it felt like in 2018, bottoming about a year later at $3,000. But the significance of that, and I'll relate this later to why I think the ETFs are so important, is that it got it in my universe. So after buying it at 17K and then watching the price just drop, like I said, like every day, I was like, well, I'm not going to sell it, so I'll just let it sit in my account, and there it is. But with that, now I'm at least aware of it. It's in my account. It's a part of my universe now. I'm at least thinking about it a little bit. And during that time as well, I had got a Twitter account and started following some of the bigger thought leaders at that time, like Anthony Pompliano. Like, he was way bigger tweeting back then about Bitcoin than he is now. I mean, he talks about it a lot. But other guys like the Winklevoss twins and some of the guys that were bigger on Twitter during that maybe 2018, 2019, time period. So I was getting kind of peppered with Bitcoin information as to, why it should be taken seriously and some of the merits as to Bitcoin. During this time as well, I had a family member who his entire career was a private wealth advisor. And unlike, I would say, most people in private wealth management who, I mean, we could have a whole podcast about the TradFi wealth management industry and the current state of that, as I think most of these guys are just more or less going collecting funds and funneling them into different flavors of S&P 500 index funds and sitting back and collecting their fees, right? But this guy was really a hardcore gold bug, right? And every time we get together for a family event or whatever it might be, might talk on the phone, every time it's just, fiat is BS. The systems, built on a house of cards. Discussing all of the things that we as Bitcoiners know and gold bugs know as well. But solely focusing that on the gold vehicle and not the Bitcoin vehicle. So I was getting the sound money message from this person. And then also in combination with Twitter, hearing the other side of that from the Bitcoiners' perspective, and then trying to kind of blending the two, informing my own ideas and thoughts about the space and where this is ultimately going. But still during that time, I wasn't like actively buying gold or like buying Bitcoin in 2018, 2019, but just becoming more familiar with it. However, that was really beneficial because ultimately it gave me a good enough knowledge base, at least, to be prepared for 2020. So fast forward, we reach March of 2020. It's mid-March. Things had just started to get a little bit weird. Like, if you remember mid-March, like, you might see someone, do you shake their hand? And it's like, people were starting to get like, do you touch each other? Anyway, like, I remember I was saying to my wife, it's like, you know what, if this ends up actually being some sort of pandemic or something, living in Manhattan in a small apartment has to be possibly the worst location in the world for one to be. Let's just pack up our bags. Let's get out of here. just in case. Maybe this blows over. It's nothing. We'll come back. So anyway, we move out to Louisiana, where I ended up spending like 18 months during COVID. And anyway, but a week or two after that, we get to late March. You remember that time? Stock market is just like limit down, circuit breakers. The world's coming to an end. Everyone's freaking out. And if you were at the time as well, they were starting to raise rates. And just like that, on a dime, they pivoted, drop rates to 0%, and just took a fire hose of money and just started spraying the problem with it, just throwing the kitchen sink at it. And I remember it was late March, and I was sitting out in the patio drinking a glass of wine. I'm like, you know what? Everything those gold guys and Bitcoin guys were talking about was absolutely correct. A crisis comes along, everything gets thrown out the window, and the debasement train just keeps on going. But this was the big one. This was the big one. And I remember sitting there and I was like, there could not be a better environment for why someone would want to own sound money to protect their savings. And then since that point, since late March, and that was actually the second time I bought Bitcoin. So I first bought it at the top at $17,000 Bitcoin in December of 2017. The next time I bought it was, I believe it was the very beginning of April. It was like $7,000 Bitcoin. But I still spent pretty much the entirety of spring of 2020, summer 2020. I was just deep down the sound money rabbit hole. But both on the gold side and Bitcoin side, and thought that was really the most significant thing and the trade that someone needs to be in. So as I was growing my knowledge base, reading everything I could, just, I'd go on, during that COVID time, I'd go on long walks through the neighborhood and just pounding hours of podcasts, guys like Max Kaiser and things like that in my ears. And, one of the things that was really a turning point for me was in August of 2020. So, just with my background in the corporate side of things at NASDAQ, dealing with issuers, C-suite executives of public companies, when Michael Seyr came onto the scene, that is what really helped legitimize things for me. For someone of his background, of the way in which he articulates the message of it, for him to make as serious of a move that he did in analyze and him understanding, okay, we're facing an extreme amount of currency debasement. I need to protect not only myself but my company because I'm sitting in a ton of cash. What do I do? Do I buy real estate? Do I buy gold? And for him to ultimately end up on as Bitcoin as the preferred store of value asset that he says, okay, this is the one I'm going to go in on, really made an impact for me. And I think it did for a lot of people. So I've been following Seyr since August of 2020. And for me personally, that's really what drove home the distinction from me. Cause I used to bucket things in terms of sound money, and I thought gold, Bitcoin. And then at that point is where I really saw the distinction of, and obviously I heard this from people like Max Kaiser and stuff, but that's what really drove me over the edge to say, okay, no, there's something clearly different with Bitcoin to improve upon all of the inefficiencies with gold. And I remember that during that time as well. It's so funny. We're fast forward almost exactly 5 years from now. Even just the physicality debate was something that was going on then. Like, oh, well, with gold, you could touch it. You have it in your hand. It can't, nothing. And that is like the biggest flaw in gold, and just, we could go down, we could have again, another podcast just on the differences of gold and Bitcoin and why Bitcoin's the superior engine. But for me, at least, the introduction into the gold world was really the first stepping stone to really helping understand, okay, why Bitcoin is superior and should be the primary means of one saving, the fruits of their labor in. So, anyway, getting deeper into 2020 and 2021, following, Seyr coming onto the scene, I've since just been consuming, all the Bitcoin books, podcasts, etc., kind of living in this world. But as you know, it could be being a Bitcoiner and having these ideas can be extremely intellectually isolating. It's not like everyone just has this huge friend network in their circle in whatever town they're living in or in their neighborhood of people that understand these concepts and see the world through a Bitcoin or sound money lens. And that's really where I started in 2024. I said, like, I was actually in 2023. So I was living in Amsterdam, and the Bitcoin Amsterdam 2023 was in town. And I remember I was working New York hours. So I'd work from like 3 p.m. to midnight, 1 a.m. And I didn't take vacation days from work to go to Bitcoin Amsterdam. And it was the conference like 10 minutes from my house. And I was like, this is so stupid. Like, why didn't I go to this? And so I was like, okay, 2024, that's the year I need to get out there, and start meeting other Bitcoiners in real life. And that's really made a huge difference. Not only in just greatly expanding my knowledge base and getting connected with a network of other Bitcoiners to kind of discuss these ideas with, but also, I mean, I'm already convicted in it, but it really does help. It really does help. So anyone that's watching this, that's maybe on the fence about going to, one of the conferences, if you have one in your area, or maybe a short flight, I'd highly recommend it. So since that point, I've been getting more ingrained into the Bitcoin world. I was out in Europe, actually in Texas right now. And I've, attended a lot of the European based conferences. I'll probably be doing some more of them in the United States. And yeah, I mean, getting to this point, I've left my corporate job, or exited the corporate world in April of this year, and I've more or less been dedicating my time to Bitcoin.
This is amazing. And there's like so many things in there. I hope I remember all of them. But the first thing I want to start with is actually the last thing. And the first thing you said is that you quit everything for Bitcoin. And I think people don't get how big this is, because you have a world, you have an income, you have a job, you have something going on, in the not Bitcoin world. I don't want to label everything as the fiat world, because there are jobs that have nothing to do with Bitcoin, but also nothing to do with fiat, if you know what I mean. But you've worked in the not Bitcoin world, and now you're like, I'm completely out of that, because I want to spend more time thinking and working and connecting in Bitcoin. Like, why was Bitcoin so compelling that you not only went into Bitcoin with your financial energy and invested in this community and invested in this asset, but also with your time and your energy actually went in full time, or like however you do it, with your energy into Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's, I mean, people like yourself understand this, but most people in the outside world don't. If the deeper you go down the rabbit hole, the more that this consumes your mind. And I've heard you say it before, and it's so true. No one knows everything about Bitcoin. You can't. It's impossible, because it touches every facet of life. And yeah, I mean, if we are correct in this, and we are, and Bitcoin becomes the next world reserve currency, that is the single most important idea that's being discussed in our time. For the time period that we happen to be born in, to grow up, to be the age that we are as adults, what other idea is more important than fixing the money? And I'd argue there isn't. So if you do believe that, then your mind just your mind just gets engulfed with this, and it just becomes like the only thing you could think about. It's why we can't shut up about this. It's why you're doing podcasts multiple times a day on this. It's why we go to the conferences. It's why we talk to random people about it, or if you're at the party, you become the Bitcoin guy in your maybe non-Bitcoiner social circle. I mean, you tone that down relative. Maybe you do that a lot at the beginning, and then you're like, okay, you chill out on it. But it's I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, to answer that question, I would say, because if you really get it, you feel like it's a moral imperative, and everything else just feels so less significant relative to what the problems that Bitcoin can solve in the world, and the impact that it can make on individuals' lives. And at the smallest level, at the smallest level, we have what is, being born in the time of Bitcoin, 16 years in, this is the first time mankind has come in contact with the hardest form of money that's ever existed, money perfected. And we're living through that transition where we're still living in a dominant fiat based world, where ultimately where this goes, transitioning into a hyper Bitcoinized world. And we just happen to be in the middle. And I just think that there needs to be more people out there who do have a good grasp on this, who can explain it, to provide education to people. So it's and to elaborate that on as well, in terms of like why I'm not just going to another fiat based job or something, which I easily could. It's like and even at my last job, the last several years, I'm there and I'm doing stuff, but my mind is on Bitcoin. So, ultimately for me to be fully present, for me to give my maximum amount of energy and capacity that I have to give, it has to be something that's mission aligned. And that can only be found in the Bitcoin world.
That's incredible. And I feel that, and I have that theory where most people buy Bitcoin because of the price, for getting rich. Some short, some long term. And most people that work in Bitcoin do it because they bought Bitcoin, they get the mission, and they know Bitcoin might just change the world. And they want to be part of that revolution. They want to be not just like, there's those 3 pillars on Bitcoin. The first pillar is the wealth pillar. You increase your purchasing power when you adopt Bitcoin. The second pillar is freedom. All of a sudden, a bank can no longer shut your account down. All of a sudden, you can transact with anyone, and all those freedoms aspects if you have self-custody. And then the third pillar is the pillar that you are just getting into with the community. I mean, you are getting into since 2024 and since longer when you are involved in the community. But this is the community, the culture, the meetup, the conferences, all those things. And I think if you only have Bitcoin on an exchange, you only get this one upside. So if you have it in self-custody, you get the second one also. But if you have Bitcoin in self-custody and you get running your node and all those things, and then you also are involved in the community and actually engage with it and work in it and provide value, services, products, whatever for the community, you are in the best place to either go to hero or zero, depending on how Bitcoin is doing. So I said it multiple times. I lined up my entire life in a way where if Bitcoin is successful, I'm majorly successful. All the podcasts will be way more successful. All the products and services and the companies I'm building, they will be way more successful. But if Bitcoin goes to shit, I have nothing. I have skills maybe that I acquired, but I've put everything on Bitcoin. And this is the most aggressive you can go in this revolution. And I tell everyone you should go there because I think we are right. And if we are right, the upside is tremendous. This is the egotistical view on it, but there's even a holistic view, like a bigger view on that, where not only you gain massively from being involved in a community, but you're also doing something good for the world. I truly believe that. I mean, everyone claims that, but I truly believe a Bitcoin standard is objectively better on an ethical level than a fiat standard. Like, I have examples to make people know about that, but this is like I'm objectively liking a Bitcoin standard more than a fiat standard. Maybe I just give this brief example. If you can wake up tomorrow as any person and it's randomly designed, and you might be Jeff Bezos or you might just be a guy in India in some slum with nothing. If you have no control over who you may wake up tomorrow, would you like to wake up in a Bitcoin era or in a fiat era? In the fiat era, if you wake up as Jeff Bezos, it's amazing. Like you have a great life. But if you wake up as Jeff Bezos in the Bitcoin era, you're still doing amazing. Like your life does not really change. But if you wake up on the bottom of the food chain, Bitcoin gives you the chance to work up. With fiat, it's very, very hard. You might not even be able to open a bank account. You might need to first earn the privilege to open a bank account. In a Bitcoin world, you can open a bank account like literally day one. You just need some sort of electronic device that is somehow connected to the internet, and you somehow get to it. So very long story. This is why I personally am involved in Bitcoin. And I think that's why everyone should be involved in Bitcoin, because you get the wealth, you get the freedom, and you get the culture and community and the mindset around that. And I just love that you also took that step. And I love seeing more and more people taking this step.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you hit it on the nail on the head with the three pillars. And not everyone's going to be like that. And we don't need everyone to be like that. But we need strong voices in the community who can articulate the message. And, it's like you said, it's like either it's going to be hero or zero. But the thing is, it's Bitcoin is either going to zero or it's going to 1 million. Well, guess what? It's not going to zero. It's not going to zero. So it's going to 1 million. But as we know, that's Bitcoin has no top because fiat has no bottom. So it's going to 2 million, it'll go to 5 million, it'll go to 10 million. Go check out Luke Broyles' videos as to, some of his projections on this. But, it's accurate. And it's why even, someone has 0.01 Bitcoin or 0.1 Bitcoin, it may just seem immaterial relative to the level of wealth, but that could be tremendous amounts of money in the future. And I think that's what will get most people there. I deal with this in my own family. I have family members and seeing, they're retired in their, 70s, maybe early 80s. And they, it's like they work their whole life, they save, and now they have to figure out, how they're allocating their portfolio. So I need to get some CDs. I need to have some real estate. Oh, I need to have this mutual fund or this dividend fund and this gold. It's like, and then how do I balance it? And it's incredibly complicated. And then as well, for someone who doesn't want a lot of volatility and they're sitting, I want to be overweight in CDs and bonds, that are paying 4 to 5% interest that taxes ordinary income, and they're just getting their wealth stolen from them, which is ultimately robbing their future generations. It's robbing their kids. It's robbing their grandkids. Being able to simplify things and having just a true sound money where you don't need to think about that anymore. You could save in Bitcoin. You could accrue the value across the entire network. Everyone's contributions to it over time makes your savings more valuable. We can go back to a savings-based future instead of people trying to, trying to pick the next winner or figure out what's the optimal way to do this. I bring that point up just because in my own personal life, I think that's what in trying to help my family members understand some of these things who, aren't going to think of maybe, well, I'm not going to be debanked or I don't need the self custody or any of that stuff. But it goes back to the ETFs as well. Why I think it is very helpful in really broadening adoption, much like my story in which I said in buying in 2017 and just getting it a part of my universe. Anyone at the beginning of 2024 who maybe just threw a little bit of IBIT into their portfolio. Well, guess what? It's been, was it 18 months or something since that point? How is that IBIT looking in terms of performance relative to everything else in their portfolio? Well, now let's take that 5 years out. Let's take that 10 years out. Ultimately, over time, people are going to come to the conclusion, get to just the exponential compounding that Bitcoin will do relative to any other asset class. They're going to have to look at that. They're going to have to look at their screen and say, well, why am I in this mutual fund that I've had since the late 1990s? Why am I in these bonds kicking off a couple percent yield when I could have just saved in Bitcoin and then just maybe shaved off a little bit to meet any, fiat income needs that I have. So I think, I mean, I know this is somewhat of a I don't know, controversial within more the pure Bitcoin community. We're just exiting paper Bitcoin summer here. um, but I do think that these things are significant in helping people kind of just expand the broader knowledge, which will ultimately lead to greater adoption. Another point on that as well, which I mean, we could go down it, but I think, the preferred stock offerings from Strategy are very significant. You have over $300 trillion bond market. I mean, keep in mind the entirety value of the Bitcoin network is 2 trillion, but the bond market over 300 trillion. Jesse Myers, that famous, the famous graph that he does that Seyr references all the time of where, total value is stored across all various asset classes for 2025. What is that? It's at 1,000 trillion. I mean, Bitcoin makes up 0.02% of that. And as you know, you can make compelling arguments why over time that could grow into 50% of that. But particularly for older individuals that are retired, they're living on a fixed income, and they do view something like CDs or something like that, or bonds, as a steady source of income without even realizing the debasement that's happening underneath them. Being able to combine Bitcoin with TradFi based products, even like what Grant Cardone's doing, combining Bitcoin with real estate, it improves upon any TradFi based product that could be a good introductory step for someone into Bitcoin. So giving someone a blend of a guaranteed yield, that's exactly it. Yep. That's the updated $1,000 trillion value. That's where we sit with Bitcoin at 2 trillion. And that's the market opportunity. I mean, the first one is just the gold comparison is so obvious. I love to use the Blockbuster and Netflix comparison. Gold, the physical version, the Blockbuster, Bitcoin, the Netflix, or you could use, say, the local, what used to be maybe the local general store in your town where you had to go to get your supplies. Well, now you have Amazon. The digital version supersedes the physical version. And gold being the physical version, Bitcoin being the digital version, not only does, and not only just that, I mean, but improving upon all of the limitations that gold has, will not only, I mean, in every instance we could name in technology, the digital version not only tends to catch up and equal the physical version, but usually far exceeds it. And so we're, over a 10x opportunity in Bitcoin just to catch up to gold, but it's so much more significant than that. And that's, I try to use that example to people, because I think that's the first step in it. But it's so much more than that. I look at real estate. I used to invest in real estate before I understood Bitcoin. I thought, oh yeah, you invest in real estate and you get the cash flow. And I don't know why anyone would invest in real estate now. I don't know why. It makes no sense to invest in real estate. And it's frankly, like I'm on X and I see these, real estate bros talking about buying these cash flowing properties in the Midwest. And it's like, buying properties that are, can be 1, 2, 3, 4 Bitcoin. Like having a portfolio of rental properties relative to owning just like one Bitcoin is just going to be seen as such a massive misallocation of capital and such a massive error into the future. Bonds, don't even get me going on that. I don't know why anyone owns a bond. And we could just go down the line. This is, you want to talk about value investing. Where's value in the market? You want to buy the Mag 7 stocks. You want to pay, I don't even know where it's at, a 30 PE for Apple stock. You want to, get into Amazon stock. What are you paying for the future value of these cash flows, relative to the growth you could experience in Bitcoin? I mean, you said in Bitcoin, it projected 30% CAGR 20-21 years from now. You're looking at, I mean, it could be in the tens of millions per coin. I mean, as Seyr puts forth in his bear, base, and bull case. But anyway, yeah, thank you, Rob, for pulling that up.
I do love the watches from Coin Vigilante, but today I have a very special message, not from me, but from the CEO himself, Carlos from Coin Vigilante. Let's hear him.
To all the Rob and Seyr podcast community, I'm Carlos Estrada from Coin Vigilante, and we're sponsors of the show, and we're going to give you a very special discount exclusive to you. 10% off your order at coinvigilante.com when you use Robin at checkout. We have really nice watches that you guys can buy right now for 10%. This is a transparency edition. Beautiful watch. These watches are worn in over 55 countries and counting. This discount is just for you, exclusive to the Robin Seyr podcast. We have limited editions. We have limited productions. These watches come in very nice packaging, boxing material, and they are collector's item for Bitcoiners only. Enjoy the discount. Thanks for supporting the show and Coin Vigilante.
I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC-free Bitcoin. That's why I use Simple Mining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today, and you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need.
I think that makes it very clear. And I think also, as you said, the bond market, first of all, like who would invest in bonds? Like, I have no clue why I would put any money in bonds. And then the second thing, as you mentioned before, that's why I also brought it up, is you said with strategy and other products, tackling long-term the bond market, it's a no-brainer. Like, people will just flock into the best performing bond, which will be the Bitcoin bond, and however it's called and how the different products are structured. And then the bond market might still be a lot, but it's actually partly the Bitcoin market. So I think Bitcoin is just like building from all those layers here some sort of pipe towards Bitcoin, and it's the one that is eating everything. Probably not everything, because there's like obviously some value in gold and in art and cars and real estate. Like, it will not suck up 100%, but it will suck up a good portion of all of it. I love this chart because it shows how tiny Bitcoin is, and people always see the, oh, we had $100,000, we had 110, we have 120. Oh yeah, like, it does not matter. Like, first of all, it's just a unit, and you have to look at the market cap. And second of all, look at how tiny Bitcoin is. Like, that's tiny. Here, gold is a 10x, and honestly, I think the most bearish case I have for Bitcoin is that it will just outperform gold by 10x. So will be worth like 200 trillion. That's for me kind of the worst case
for Bitcoin at that moment, which is more than some other bull cases. But that's for me the worst case. The best case is Bitcoin just sucks up 50% of everything, and it's 500, 600 trillion in today's dollars terms. So it's just crazy when we actually start to calculating what's possible with Bitcoin, and nobody knows what the top is because there is no top, and we've never seen this digital scarcity in anything. Like we've never had something like Bitcoin. So like the possibilities are just endless.
The finite nature, the finite nature of it, like how many coins are actually floating around, going down the line of 8 billion global population. But even there, say there's 60 million millionaires globally, 40 of which live in the Western world, 21 million Bitcoin. If every 1 million millionaire wanted one, they couldn't get a full coin. But as we know, remove 1 million coins for Satoshi, remove all the Bitcoin that's owned by ETFs, remove MicroStrategy's 635,000 Bitcoin, whatever it is now, and start going down the line. There's really not a whole lot of Bitcoin floating out there. And I do like Seyr's analogy in saying that we are kind of living, we are living in the Bitcoin gold rush era. And if you want to get your hands on some Bitcoin, like now is the time to do it, because even one Bitcoin at roughly $100,000 a coin, someone say has $1 million net worth, they would allocate 10%, buying that one Bitcoin. Like that will just be unfathomable amount of wealth for their grandkids. Project, like I'm 36 years old. So when I'm 66 years old, kids that I'll be speaking with, say I was to go speak to some high school kids, they won't be able to comprehend that I was, that you were able to buy one, that someone owns one Bitcoin. That will never be achievable in their lifetime. Much like in our generation, we look at the boomers who said, wow, you bought your house for $30,000 and you did it when you were, 28 years old. And it's like that we're buying just a normal house seems out of reach for so many people nowadays. That's exactly what it will be for Bitcoin. The opportunity that we have in front of us to accumulate and stack Bitcoin. It's why it's so important for the little guy to understand it, because it's the opportunity to front run what is the most asymmetric trade in possibly human history. Like that is the opportunity that we're looking at. There's no greater investment opportunity that one can understand. And whether someone is, people are going off to work every day, clocking in their 9 to 5 or doing whatever it is they do. They're not going to be able to outwork the debasement. 2, the extra hours that they put in at their work, maybe they're striving to get that promotion and, get a little bit of extra money, which is great. But there is no single thing that they could do that would be more impactful for their financial future to understand the ramifications of them and their family members owning Bitcoin and holding it. Nothing will be of greater financial significance to them. So it's part of the reason why we get out there and we talk about this, because it's hard. We get lost in the noise day to day. We're just at you're on X all the time as well. Past 2 weeks, people are freaking out. MSTRs go, Bitcoin was 123. Now we're at 110. It feels so bearish out there. Robin, when we were hanging out a year ago at Bitcoin Amsterdam, we're at like $60,000 Bitcoin. We're at 110 right now, and everyone's freaking out. Like go back 5 years. Let's project out 5 years from now where we're at in the Bitcoin price. Everyone needs to chill out. Everyone needs to chill out and just take a step back and look at the big picture as to the opportunity in front of us. I would hope so to try to get this communicated to people's family members. As I said, there's no bigger decision that one will make to provide security and prosperity for one's bloodline in the future.
I 100% totally agree with that. And I'm amazed how bearish people are, even though we are up, let me not say something wrong, but we are up the past 1 year, the past 12 months, 91%. So we almost doubled the last 12 months, and people act like we are down 30%, we are down 40%. We are up 91% the last 12 months. That's if you say like we can make this calculation really quickly. Let me calculate that. We have now exactly a calculator. We have now 110,000. So 110,000. If we doubling every year now for the next 5 years, so that same performance in the last 12 months, we will be next year at 220. This will be 2026, 2027, we will be at 440. 2028, we will be already at 880,000. Then we will be at 1.7 million in 2029. And in 2025, we would be at 3.5 million US dollars. So those 90, 100% a year, which some people think we're in a bear market. Those are crazy numbers. And if this is not realistic, I don't think 90% is a realistic CAGR for Bitcoin. Probably like 40, 50, 30, 20, whatever. Still amazing numbers. But I'm almost getting emotional when people are saying, oh, like, why is Bitcoin so boring and not doing anything? Man, we are up 92%. Like get some low time preference.
Yeah, I hear that from people as well. I mean, we could talk about price probably all day, but people say, oh, well, like, if Bitcoin's great, like, why does it go down? Why does it go down in price? Like, I don't know if people used to say that. It's like, it's just take a step back, look at the big picture. I just posted this on my X the other day. It showed the price of Bitcoin on each Labor Day. In the United States, we had a holiday yesterday, Labor Day, and showed the price going back from 2012, just on that singular day, on Labor Day each year from 2012. And I posted, I'm like, people look at this chart and say to themselves, I don't know, it seems risky, better sit on the sidelines to wait to see how this plays out. And it's like it's playing out in front of your eyes. And if it's why studying Bitcoin is the single most lucrative thing you could do with your time. I thought about this a while back, and based on the CAGR, and as discussing before, based on the relative wage bump you could get in terms of a promotion at your job, maybe an extra side hustle you can get, nothing is going to have a bigger impact than understanding what's going on in this market in regards to Bitcoin.
100%. And I want to show you something fun, because you have mentioned before the boomers that are buying houses for like 30,000 and selling them for like millions. And there's this amazing meme where it says boomers, and I will just quickly show this with you. You probably have seen that. I've seen it so many times, and it still just gets me how wholesome this video is. For me at least. So this is the meme: boomers selling their homes for $2 million after buying them in 1969 for 7 raspberries. And I hope you all can hear now the sound of that.
It's so true. It's so true. But I'm a millennial, or if you're in Gen Z, it's like opt out of that madness. Don't buy the million, $800,000, $1 million, $2 million house. Like, buy Bitcoin and wait. I mean, housing price, that's another thing. Housing prices are actually collapsing, denominated in Bitcoin, right? You can pull up the other meme that's out there, or just the infographic, but it shows, like, back in America, at least, you have a standard house that we measure against, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. In 2016, I'll probably get the numbers a little bit wrong, but it'll be close enough. And for this example, in 2016, that house cost around 650 Bitcoin. Fast forward 2020, that's going to cost around 40 Bitcoin. Fast forward to today, that house is probably like 4 Bitcoin. Pretty soon that house is going to be 1 Bitcoin. Pretty soon that house is going to be half a Bitcoin. And same with the grocery store. People say, oh man, groceries are so expensive. Like, what happened? I remember a few years ago, the price of eggs or the price of whatever it is that they're buying, the price of going to Chipotle and getting a burrito bowl or McDonald's or whatever it is, the price of a hamburger. Well, they're pricing it in fiat terms. If you're living on a Bitcoin standard, it's like, oh man, isn't this fantastic? Like the price of everything just keeps going down. Like this is great. But that like blows people's minds. But sometimes I say it in a joking way like that around people just to get them thinking in terms of considering that if you were to denominate something in a different unit of account, you might have a different outcome in your life and view the world around you differently.
I 100% agree. And I just pulled it up because I think it's truly amazing. You see the median US house priced in Bitcoin, and you can start, I think it starts at like 2011. Obviously 2011, it's an outrageously high price. I don't even know how many, it's like 300, 400,000 Bitcoin, something like that. And then if you go down to, let's say 2017, we already are at 300 Bitcoin. So we went from 300,000 Bitcoin to 300 Bitcoin in 6 years. Then let's put out another 6 years. We're going from 300 Bitcoin in 2023 to 18 Bitcoin. And then 2 years more from 18 Bitcoin, as you said before, to just 4 Bitcoin. And this will be in a few years' time just a Bitcoin. And at some point you will buy a home, a nice home for 0.1 Bitcoin. And people will be shocked. and we will be like, oh, how can you be shocked? We've talking about that since years. And I know, like, if you got into Bitcoin in 2013, congratulations. Like there was no education out there. There was no podcast out there, no books. I know there's something was out there, but almost nothing. Right now, there are so many podcasts, so many books, so many great articles. So, like the president is talking about it. Like, please listen to what people are saying about Bitcoin, because now you don't have an excuse why you didn't buy. The only excuse is you are either, and I mean it sounds very rude when I say it like that, but the excuse is either arrogance, ignorance, or laziness. Like one of those three things, because I think everyone is smart enough to understand Bitcoin. You don't have to be super smart to understand Bitcoin. It's not that complicated. If you get fiat, you will get Bitcoin. And so it's just about your preference where you spend your time.
That's all it is. That's all it is. And like I said before, the single most lucrative thing you could do with your time is to understand this topic. That's it.
100%. One more thing that I want to get into with you is in general the treasury companies. We've mentioned, I think, Strategy and MetaPlanet that you are into. How do you look at them, and what is kind of the significance of them for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, obviously Michael Seyr had a really big impact on my understanding of Bitcoin. And I think in the earlier days of what he was doing, I mean, I thought it was interesting, but I don't think I grasped the significance, or anyone really did, to see where it would lead to today. I never would have thought of the preferred stock offerings that he's doing to tap the fixed income market, and now seeing the direct the opportunity that he has with that. I mean, he just announced, was earlier today, that he's increasing the dividend for Stretch, the STRC money market product, where you can now, I believe it was earlier this morning, checking today's prices, you get a 10.3% yield on what's effectively a money market equivalent fund. It's over double where you're getting anywhere else. If anyone is remotely paying attention to this, and they're in any CDs, bonds, REITs, rental properties, traditional, just blue chip dividend funds, how could you not be taking a look at this as by far and away the best income producing products on the market, backed by Bitcoin? So I think the opportunities are so significant with MSTR. I mean, that's just talking about the preferreds. That's a whole separate conversation. But where they're ultimately going with this, I mean, to be the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin and establish his monopoly status over 630,000 Bitcoin now, I don't think anyone will ever be able to catch him. And the optionality that will give him in the future to grow into and become what I believe will be the most valuable company in the world And right now in the gold rush era, it's focused on accumulation. But where is this 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now? And he could go a number of directions, whether he wants to become the Solomon Brothers or Goldman Sachs of Bitcoin. Could evolve into a Berkshire Hathaway like entity, because at some point, like right now, like you want to buy and hold Bitcoin because it's going to be very difficult to find investments that are going to outperform the compounded annual growth rate of Bitcoin from this point going forward. However, 20 years from now, that'll be a different case. You will go invest your Bitcoin. You will buy operating companies that will be able to produce returns that are in excess of what you would get just holding Bitcoin. And you will go make that investments that will produce SAP flow to your shareholders. And you could build out a Berkshire Hathaway type of engine and own a portfolio of companies. But also right now, like, I mean, I think MSTR has like solidified themselves as the monopoly status, but I'm particularly interested in if you go to my X page, I talk about this all the time. I think MetaPlanet is by far and away the most interesting story in the non-strategy treasury space, with the unique characteristics in the Japanese market, the most yield starved market in the developed world, the management team of what Simon and Dylan have executed on. I mean, they started off this year with a little over 1,500 Bitcoin. Now they just had their EGM earlier this week. They're now at 20,000 Bitcoin. And within the next six weeks, they could be, I mean, depending on where the price ends up, they could be between, 40,000 and 50,000 Bitcoin. Launching preferreds in a yield starved market like Japan. And that's really the biggest engine I see going forward with the treasury companies, and in giving people an escape valve out of the traditional yield based products into Bitcoin backed yield products. And as you and I know, the Bitcoin backed products are going to be far superior and give people a much higher yield, which is going to suck a lot of money out of that market into Bitcoin, which they'll trade that 5% yield. Simon and Dylan take that $100 and say, yeah, I'll pay you out that $5 per year, but I'm going to convert the rest of that into Bitcoin, which is going to CAGR at a significantly faster rate, much like what Michael Saylor is doing. And I could go on and on about MetaPlanet, but overall, like in the treasury space, I know it's somewhat of a controversial topic within the, like, I'd say like more hardcore Bitcoin community. That's like, no, you need to self-custody only. You need to go out in the world, provide value, save in Bitcoin, etc. And like, I agree with that. I totally agree with that ethos. But as adoption grows, we agree that Bitcoin is the best treasury asset that one could put on their personal balance sheet and that one could put on the balance sheet of a corporate. So in seeing the adoption of corporates, and it's funny we've come to this point, because back in August of 2020, when Seyr announced this, and going into 2021, I remember Seyr, he laid out the playbook, and he was open to take a phone call from anyone that would be interested in executing this strategy. And we really didn't see a lot of movement after that for years. Now, this year, we are seeing it pick up. But I think the criticism comes from a lot of the more hardcore Bitcoiners is like, hey, well, where's the operating business in these companies? It's just, we're throwing up a company, we have a management team, and then we're just kind of playing fiat games, so to say, and arbitraging the fiat world to convert it to Bitcoin. But you know what? We happen to live in a time right now where those arbitrage opportunities exist. And if you're smart enough to take advantage of them, like, why wouldn't you? And that's exactly what we're doing. We have had, we did have kind of I think we're in a bull market in Bitcoin, but we've had a mini bear market within a broader bull market within the treasury companies, as you've seen, just crazy MNAV expansion. Like, I think Smarter Web was trading at like a 20 MNAV maybe 2 months ago. As of this morning, they're at like a 1.4 MNAV, and you've seen that the air just get let out on a lot of these companies. And I think that going forward, that strategy is going to be a lot harder to attract capital, because like, what is differentiating yourself? What are you doing? Is there now an operating business associated with this that can produce cash flows and stack more Bitcoin? And that's ultimately like where I want this to go. We want, because existing in hyper Bitcoin's world, there's still going to be all the businesses today that well, not all of them today, but there's still going to be plenty of businesses that exist. We still need real estate. We still need, the grocery stores and all of this type of stuff. But with that, we want them saving we want them converting these fiat cash flows into Bitcoin. And I don't know when that will happen. I don't know if it will be in the next year, 2 years, or maybe we need to get to another cycle where first it was Michael Saylor kind of paving the way and doing it with MSTR, waited another cycle really for the proliferation of more Bitcoin treasury companies in all the various jurisdictions across the globe that have appeared. And then I don't know if it'll be next cycle. Companies that are in the S&P 500 will come around and start putting forth Bitcoin treasury strategies. It really just depends on, I think, the education that takes place in between now and then, demand from the shareholder base. And I'm really curious to see where it goes, because it's the next evolution in the adoption of Bitcoin on the corporate side.
I'm really curious too. There's like two main thoughts that I'm curious of, like how many other companies will try to compete with strategy, but then also I'm curious on what the government will do about strategy when they figure out, oh shit, like we will have a hard time getting to more Bitcoin than they have. Will they talk about nationalizing strategy? Do they kind of say, hey, we'll buy you out for like 2x your value. We give you a bunch of fiat. Or maybe they're actually trying to, because I have a hard time believing if we're getting to a Bitcoin world and the government is just sitting back, relaxing with 20,000 Bitcoin and seeing how there's a single company that is coming close to 1 million Bitcoin and not doing anything about it. I have a hard time believing a government will do that, especially if the government has the US reserve currency, if the world reserve currency, and just print endless money. I don't know. So there's like this strategy thing where I'm like, will this be the future reserve for the US? And then it's like, oh, there will be a lot of other companies coming in and compete with strategy. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because like I've thought about that long and hard, but like I've no clue what the US will do with a single company that has so many Bitcoin.
I've thought about it too, and frankly, I was out in Orlando at Strategy World earlier this year in May, and that was like the very beginning of May. It was right before we had that big run up and all the other Bitcoin, the smaller cap Bitcoin treasury companies, and in discussing with like a lot of the MSTR investors there and discussing some of these companies, the first thing that I thought about was, would I want to own stock in a company based on their jurisdiction? Where are they located? How do I feel about the political climate and regulatory body in the UK? How do I feel about a company that's domiciled that's headquartered in the European Union, having those regulators oversee this and then build up a potential honeypot that they could tap? How would I feel about, look at Moon in Hong Kong or mainland China. How do you feel with them stepping in and potentially doing something like you're describing? How do you feel about the environment in Japan? Go down the list. Ultimately, I do think U.S. is the best environment, particularly like right now. But as we all know, that can change. That can change quickly. The political winds can change, and you could have a hostile government come in, and something like that could potentially happen. I ultimately, I think about it, and I don't quite have the answer, and I don't know where. Well, no one has the answer. No one ultimately knows where it ends up. I was thinking about it more yesterday, though, and ultimately, I think that anyone that's been involved, like an MSTR, like especially like today, if we were to get to a point where that happens, Bitcoin would have had to appreciate it to such a degree where the government would feel the necessity to step in and do something like that. And like you said, they could pay 2x the NAV, and everyone that's involved with it, getting paid in fiat. But I think it'd be a scenario where most of the investors would probably be happy with the decision. Maybe they didn't make as much money, like in Bitcoin terms, but probably enough to where they're not too annoyed with it. But yeah, that is the risk factor. That is ultimately the risk factor. But then the second derivative on top of that is look at Coinbase. Look how many coins Coinbase is. I mean, they're custodying nearly all of the coins for the ETFs in the US outside of, I know Fidelity custodies themselves, which I think makes it a more interesting ETF to own and differentiates them from just owning IBIT. But that's a huge honeypot as well. I feel like it's not as discussed as much. Well, it is discussed today, but not as much when it was first coming out, where like I just see all the time, not your keys, not your coin. And again, that it's not just MSTR. It's any Bitcoin that you're not self-custodying. You don't truly own. You don't truly own. Same with the treasury companies. Yeah, those treasury companies have Bitcoin on their balance sheet now. What if we get to a bear market and they have a different management team that comes in, they start selling some of the coins? Or there's just, when you deviate from self-custody, you open up a lot of different risk factors that you don't have to deal with in your self-custody. So that's why it's important for people, particularly like the new people that are coming in, because prior to last year, that's the only option you had. So anyone involved in Bitcoin had to learn these things. Now you're not forced to learn these things. It's funny. I was talking about someone the other day too. I think you'd find this funny, is that like the most hated person in the Bitcoin world right now is someone that is like 100% Bitcoin treasury companies and owns no Bitcoin, but like there are people like that, and it's easy to do nowadays. But yeah, Robin, I don't know. I don't quite have the answer. I don't quite have the answer for it, but I would just say,
it's a very good point that you brought up, because Coinbase has more Bitcoin than Strategy. I believe they have over 1 million Bitcoin in their control. Like, people can correct me, but like I think they have over 1 million Bitcoin for their custodial, for their clients, but also what they are holding themselves, which I think is not that big of a pie, but major is like this is what they are holding for the ETFs, for their clients, for the customers, and all of them. It's way bigger, and they're holding a lot of the ETFs, so they're probably nationalizing the US could probably even claim, if Bitcoin gets bigger and Coinbase gets even more Bitcoin, that they're like, hey, Coinbase, you are an critical infrastructure piece in this new economy. So yeah, we have to have some control in your company and nationalize some of it. So it's an interesting thought, because they probably are more inclined to do it with Coinbase than with Strategy. I haven't thought about that, actually. So dumb of me that I didn't think about that, because like Coinbase is so obvious, like they have more Bitcoin, they have more critical infrastructure, but they're behind the scenes, like you don't, like Strategy is so open about it, like, oh, we have now that many Bitcoin. They're like very, like Coinbase is not putting out a weekly chart where like, hey, we have so many Bitcoin now, thank you for giving them all to us. Like, obviously that would be stupid of them.
Yeah. It's, again, you get any Bitcoin in the TradFi, like the traditional rails, those are the potential risks you open up and have to weigh against, and what percentage. Everyone's different. I mean, there's a lot of people I see on X that are like, no, 100% self-custody. Other people, maybe it's like you have half of it in ETF, form Bitcoin / MSTR, Bitcoin Treasury. The other half you self-custody. It's really just, it's a very personal decision that everyone has to weigh for themselves and decide what's best. But there's there are like a lot of, there's benefits of being like in ETF, Bitcoin. And they're also, I don't know if they have it yet, but I know that's approved for have in-kind transfer, where you could actually pull out the Bitcoin and self-custody yourself. But there's a lot of other things that just need to be worked on. Like, what about if you want liquidity, but you don't want to sell your Bitcoin? The Bitcoin-backed lending space, they're charging like 14% loans on Bitcoin, whereas you could go and be in FBTC or IBIT and go to interactive brokers and get like, a 5% loan on that. So there's advantages, particularly if someone has like a larger amount of coins and would want to maybe spread that out, or even just the ability for one to sleep at night. Some people aren't going to be comfortable fully self-custodying their Bitcoin. It's going to provide them that peace of mind and maybe make them a bit of a better hodler if they have it spread out in different areas. They have MSTR, they have some ETF, they have their own self-custody. So at the end of the day, it's just a very, very personal decision, but people should be aware and be thinking through these type of risk factors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always argue for at least have some sort of self-custody. We are so early in this revolution, you should at least just, and even if it's just for learning purposes, you should get like a hardware wallet, some metal backup, and just like try it out, how it works and how it is. And even if it's purely for learning how Bitcoin works. If you have a substantial amount in Bitcoin and you're early, as you are when you're watching this, in this Bitcoin revolution, I feel like you have at least some sort of responsibility to educate yourself how Bitcoin works. That's why also I'm an advocate for try to run a node. I think you should run a node, but even if you don't want to run a node, just download it on your own PC, try it out, get yourself familiar with all the things that is thing. Like you just have to invest some time to educate yourself. And you don't even have there are Start 9, like the Raspberry Pi 5, you can buy them. They're not that much, but you can also just do it on the laptop, PC that you already have. Mining Bitcoin obviously would be also great, but bottom line, there will be a small group of people that will fight very hard with self-custody, with running their own node, with mining Bitcoin, that will keep the whole freedom thing alive. And they ultimately bring the basis for the number go up. And so Bitcoin will be successful, even if the mainstream doesn't care about freedom, doesn't care about the self-custody, because I think the mainstream doesn't care. That is very clearly to see with the numbers. We just need enough people to care. It can be a very small group of people, but if we have enough people to care about self-custody and sovereignty, this alone will enable the freedom for 100% of the earth, which is funny. Like if a small subset of people run their own nodes, do the self-custody, care about the freedom, defend the network, this is enough, like a few percent, 1%, 2%, 3%. I think with Jeff Poover talked about 4%, or maybe it was 2%. If they are doing that, 100% of the network actually benefits from that, and we don't need 50% or 60% doing it. We just need that small piece of group, I advocate for people to be in that small group, but obviously we don't need a lot actually in that group, and there's a lot of positive and advantages for someone to be there, for like privacy and freedom and all of that, but not everyone will be in there because it's also work and money.
It is, and I mean, I agree with everything you said there, and particularly on the education piece. Like, if someone was watching this and was like, "Oh, I'm kind of curious. Maybe I will crack open and read the Bitcoin Standard, or go and do a deep dive on a bunch of Bitcoin podcasts or something." Like, you can watch as much of the material as you want. You can read the books, but like, take self custody. Do a transaction. Send Bitcoin to someone. It's a very different feeling, and you'll never understand that through just owning an ETF. Like, you won't understand what it's actually like to take possession of it, and what that means, what that feels like, the type of security and sovereignty that gives you, being truly outside of the system. So, and I do think that is getting lost now a bit, with the ETFs, with people just buying MSTR or Treasury companies. But like you said, we'll have a core contingent group of people that will do that. But yeah, anyone watching this, certainly, do some of the things Robin suggested, because it'll really change your views as to what this asset is and the value it provides.
We have one question that I ask each and every one of my guests, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin? That's
a good question. And that's really the main topic I think about, that runs through my mind all the time. I don't know if I have the best answer prepared for you. I'd say outside of Bitcoin, I'm really into fitness. I'm pretty diligent, and, getting my, whatever, 10, 20,000 steps a day, trying to get the gym, 4 or 5 days a week, tracking macros. So anything, fitness related, I'd say I'd be, a good person to advise on that. But now my my mind's in Bitcoin, Robin.
And you are fit as hell. Like I've seen you in person. You're super, you're jacked and you're super fit. Like I can see that you're putting a lot of efforts into your, not only your mental health, but like your physical health, majorly. So like that's because it's sometimes if you see someone just on a screen, you don't fully see it, but then you like see him in person and you're like, oh, like he's fit. Like, he has something.
Thanks.
We have end routine, as you know, where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, if you could work in any sector of Bitcoin, what would it be and why?
Oh, no question. So, it's the thing within the Bitcoin community, we have all types of different shape, sizes, skill sets that people bring to the table. As we were discussing earlier, like I'm not a technical Bitcoiner, and it's funny. I actually was in Riga, Latvia, a month ago at Baltic Honey Badger, and I flew in 2 days earlier. They had Bitcoin Plus Plus, and that's the first Bitcoin Plus Plus I went to, and it's usually at these Bitcoin conferences, I feel like I can talk to anyone because everyone's on the same page. They speak the same language I do. That's the first Bitcoin event I went to where I felt like a fish out of water because everyone is just super technical. I don't know what they're talking about. The presentation's just like, it's so over my head. So anything on the technical side wouldn't be for me, but that would be perfect for other people, right? So, but for me, it would be really a client facing role. I would say someone who's, has maybe a decent amount of wealth or a high net worth individual who's looking to make an allocation to Bitcoin or has an allocation to Bitcoin and needs someone as an advisor, needs someone who, sees Bitcoin, maybe where we get a little correction, we drop 20, 30%. They need someone to call up, to make sure everything is okay. Or just, chat about what's going on in Bitcoin news and have someone who's very informed and can advise them on that and just be kind of a trusted contact. I think with my skill set and my background, that would fit perfectly for me. So something in kind of like private client advisory, for anything Bitcoin related, I think would be the best way in which I could, at least like within an actual job within Bitcoin, the best way in which I can contribute.
100%. It's funny because I've been a developer, but at very technical things, I feel also a little bit out of bound. Like, oh shit, like what is going on here? Really cool, man. I enjoyed it so much, Mitch, with you being here in the podcast. Before I let you go, where can people find you and ask you questions?
Yeah, like I said, I'm on X every day. Mitch _BTC21. Also LinkedIn a little bit, but not really. I'm mainly on X. Just give me on X. My DMs are open. If you want to chat about anything, just shoot me a note.
Awesome. Then yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Mitch. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.